Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Erica Bell, and today we need to have a serious, unfiltered talk about the most slandered, misunderstood, and frankly, exhausted sign in the entire zodiac. Yes, we are talking about Gemini. Let me start with the visual that I want you to hold in your head. Imagine you're at a party and you meet someone who is absolutely lighting up the room. They're telling this hilarious story about a random documentary they watched at 3 in the morning. They're jumping from talking about ancient history to 90s hip hop. They're making everyone laugh, and they make you feel like you are the only person in the room when they look at you. Then, 3 days later, you see them at a local coffee shop. They're buried in a book with their headphones on, and when you say hello, they give you a polite, slightly detached nod and go right back to their screen.
And immediately, what does your brain do? You think, oh, there it is. The classic Gemini, two faced, fake. One day they love me, the next day they're icy. But wait a minute. Is that actually fake? Or is that just a multifaceted person who has different modes of operating? See, this is the classic Gemini duality myth that I want to completely dismantle today. We have romanticized this idea that Geminis have two split personalities, that they're malicious or duplicitous, when the reality is far more interesting and honestly far more challenging to navigate if you're dating them.
Gemini is a mutable air sign ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of the mind, communication, and processing information. When we talk about Gemini, we are talking about pure mental energy. They are not two faced, they are multifaceted processors. They process the world through logic, through words, and through constant mental stimulation. And because they process everything through their heads, people often accuse them of being emotionally detached. But that's a massive misconception. Geminis feel things deeply, but they don't process emotions the way water signs do, with tears and dramatic displays, or the way fire signs do, with passion and rage. A Gemini processes their deepest feelings by analyzing them, talking them out, or translating them into a concept they can understand. If a Gemini is hurting, they don't just sit in the pain. They want to talk about why they're hurting, what the root cause is, and what the logical solution should be. And if you're dating them, this can feel like emotional avoidance. You might say, "Why won't you just show me what you feel?" And they're looking at you like, "I just spent 45 minutes explaining exactly what I think about this situation. How is that not emotional?" It's a different language.
But here is where the real relationship tension lives, and I want to call this out directly. Gemini is a sign that is constantly evolving, growing, and changing their mind. They are collectors of information. If they learn something new today that contradicts what they believed yesterday, they will pivot. To a partner who values predictability and slow, steady consistency, this feels like instability. It feels like the rug is constantly being pulled out from under you. Partners of Geminis often complain to me, "Erica, I never know where I stand." One week they are completely obsessed with building a life together, and the next week they're talking about moving to Spain to learn how to make cheese. And look, as your astro bestie, I'm here to tell you both things can be true. They weren't lying to you when they said they wanted to build a life with you, and they aren't lying now about the cheese. They are just reacting to whatever is mentally stimulating them in the present moment. But that doesn't make it easy to build a foundation on.
And we're going to get into exactly why that keeps so many people stuck in a loop of confusion with this sign. Now, before we go any further, we have to stop treating all Geminis like they were minted in the exact same factory. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you know I absolutely despise lazy blanket astrology. Not all Geminis are the same, and a huge part of that comes down to whether they were born in May or June, and whether they sit on a cusp. Let's break this down, because this explains why some Geminis seem like absolute social butterflies on speed, while others seem remarkably quiet and grounded. Let's start with May Geminis. Because of their proximity to Taurus, May Geminis carry a heavy earth influenced undercurrent. They are often much more grounded, stable, and patient than the typical stereotype suggests. A May Gemini doesn't just flutter from idea to idea, they actually want to build something tangible with their thoughts. They are slower to hand over their trust. If you're dating a May Gemini, you'll notice they have a routine. They like their comfort, they value financial security, and they aren't as quick to jump into the social fire as their June counterparts. They surprise people because they seem calm, dependable, and less chaotic. But then you look at June Geminis, and this is where the Cancer influence starts to creep in. June Geminis are a completely different breed. They are highly intuitive, deeply emotional, and let's be real, incredibly moody. While a May Gemini might process a breakup by systematically organizing their apartment and looking at their budget, a June Gemini is going to feel that emotional sting right in their chest. They are highly relationship driven. They secretly, and sometimes not so secretly, crave emotional validation and deep connection. They act like they're tough and intellectual, but underneath that quick witted armor, they are deeply sensitive to the energy around them. And then we have the cusps, which are the true translators of the zodiac. First, you have the Taurus-Gemini cusp, which we call the energy source. These are people born roughly between May 17th and May 23rd. This is an incredible mix of dust and wind, earth and air. They have the practical, industrious mind of Taurus combined with the social, expressive brilliance of Gemini. They are often brilliant entrepreneurs because they don't just have the big creative ideas, they actually have the work ethic and stamina to execute them. In relationships, they are surprisingly loyal. They don't run at the first sign of routine because that Taurus energy craves a solid anchor. On the other end, we have the Gemini Cancer cusp, born roughly between June 18th and June 24th, known as the magic cusp. If you are lucky enough to date an aligned Gemini Cancer cusp, you are dealing with a master communicator. They possess the intellectual curiosity of Gemini, but it is beautifully tempered by the emotional intelligence and nurturing spirit of Cancer. They understand both logic and emotion. They can sit with you during a hard conversation and not only analyze the problem logically, but also hold space for your feelings without getting defensive. They are the ultimate relationship translators because they can speak to your mind and your heart at the exact same time. But if they are unaligned, oh honey, the mood swings will make your head spin. They will analyze their own hurt feelings until they've convinced themselves you're the villain, and then they'll ice you out with a silence that is deafening. All right, let's get into the gender dynamics because Gemini men and Gemini women navigate dating in very different ways, and their core fears in relationships reflect that split. Let's start with the Gemini man. Look, the Gemini man is a natural flirt. It is just in his chemistry. He has this playful, boyish charm, and he can strike up a conversation with a wall and make the wall feel special. But because of this, people often struggle to tell if a Gemini man is genuinely interested or if he's just being his usual social self. So let me give you the absolute receipt of interest for a Gemini man: his level of daily communication. When a Gemini man likes you, he will talk your ear off. He will send you random articles at 2 in the morning, ask your opinion on the most absurd hypotheticals, send you endless voice notes, and double text you without an ounce of shame. Why? Because to him, mental connection is the ultimate foreplay. If he is sharing his constant stream of consciousness with you, you are in. But wait a minute. If that communication suddenly dies down, if the texts become dry, or if he takes 12 hours to reply with, "Cool, sounds fun," do not make excuses. Do not say, "Oh, he's just busy with work." No, something has shifted. His mental focus has moved elsewhere, and with a Gemini man, where his mind goes, his energy follows. Period. Now, let's talk about the Gemini woman. She is a completely different force. Gemini women are incredibly intelligent, fiercely independent, and they are virtually immune to manipulation. You cannot run a standard low effort playbook on a Gemini woman because she will see right through it, analyze it, and probably roast you for it to her friends. For a Gemini woman, physical attraction is nice, but mental connection is an absolute prerequisite. If you cannot hold a conversation with her, if you don't challenge her intellectually, or if you can't make her laugh, it doesn't matter if you look like a supermodel. She will get bored, and once a Gemini woman is bored, she is gone. This brings us to their core relationship fears, and this is where we see the split. Gemini men fundamentally fear a loss of freedom. They are terrified of being caged, of having their wings clipped, or being forced into a rigid, predictable routine where they have to account for every second of their day. They associate commitment with confinement. But Gemini women, their fear is different. They don't necessarily fear commitment itself. They fear a loss of self. They fear getting into a relationship where they stop growing, where they are expected to shrink themselves to fit into a partner's quiet life, or where their intellect is ignored. A Gemini woman wants to keep learning, traveling, and exploring, and she is terrified of a partnership that feels like a slow domestic death. So, how do we actually read these people in real time? Let's decode their communication playbook and look at the green and red flags, because with Gemini, everything is revealed in how they speak and how they don't speak. When you are dealing with a healthy, aligned Gemini, their communication is a beautiful thing. It's open, curious, and consistent. They want to integrate you into their daily life. They don't keep you in a secret box. A major green flag with a Gemini is when they start introducing you to their friends, taking you to their favorite weird spots, and making plans with you for next month. Because they live so much in the present moment, future planning, even if it's just planning a weekend trip 3 weeks from now, is a massive sign that they are serious about you. They are actively choosing to write you into their upcoming chapters. But what does an unaligned, unhealthy Gemini look like? It is the classic hot and cold text cycle. One week they are blowing up your phone, sending you memes, planning elaborate dates, and making you feel like you're on top of the world. The next week, total radio silence. They are busy, they are overwhelmed, or they are suddenly unavailable. This is breadcrumbing, plain and simple, and I need you to stop making excuses for it. Do not say, oh, their Gemini energy is just restless right now. No, that is emotional unavailability. It is a toxic red flag when a Gemini uses their need for variety or freedom as an excuse to treat you like an option when they want validation and ignore you when they want space.
Another major red flag is when they avoid difficult conversations by talking around the issue. Geminis are masters of words, which means an unaligned Gemini can use their intellect to weaponize communication. They will over explain, use intellectual jargon, or deflect with sarcasm to avoid showing true vulnerability. If you try to talk about an emotional wound and they respond with a joke or a debate style counterargument, they are hiding. And remember, for a Gemini, silence often means everything. If they stop sharing their thoughts, their random ideas, and their daily complaints with you, the mental connection has been severed. Which brings us to the final cosmic truth about this sign. To love a Gemini and to be loved by them, you have to understand their fundamental paradox. They require a partner who respects their absolute need for freedom while simultaneously offering them a safe, consistent space to land. They don't want a warden, they want a co pilot. They want someone who can keep up with their rapid fire mind, laugh at their ridiculous jokes, and join them on their spontaneous adventures, but who also has the grounding presence to say, hey, take a breath. You don't have to carry all that mental noise alone. Before we close out, let's answer our quiz question from earlier. What does a Gemini usually value most in a relationship? If you guess C, mental connection, you are 100% correct. Without that mental spark, nothing else stands a chance. And for our poll of the week, head over to our social media at Heart Sync Media Group and let us know, what is the most Gemini thing you have ever experienced? Was it a random, unexplained disappearance? Or was it a 5-hour long deep conversation at 2 in the morning? I want to hear your stories, and yes, I want to see the receipts. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Remember, your sign matters, but your standards matter more. Stop making excuses for the cold text messages and start choosing the people who show up for you with consistency. See you next time.